Guys, ChatGPT has been such a big hype around all across the internet, as well as a lot of other AI tools. So I actually have been playing around with it, and I want to share something with you from a Christian perspective. First of all, ChatGPT is a generative language model that can do a lot of research for you, but it also mixes in truth and fakes, and it just sometimes makes things up when it doesn't have an answer to things. So sometimes when you ask it some questions, you have to ask it to provide you with the sources that it took the data from, and then try and see if that's valid. And then you can also ask it, is what you're saying based on facts or is it real? Here is what I ask it at first to determine what is driving it. I mean the spirit behind it. We know that everything on earth falls into two camps. You're either with God, or if you're not with God, then you are against God. There's no such thing as a neutral ground. So here's what I asked it. I asked it, do you believe Jesus is God? And I highlighted what I mean by belief. And I highlighted the core doctrine that Jesus is actually God, incarnated in physical flesh as the Son of Man, died on the cross under Pontius Pilate in a specific time, and then on the third day he rose again, resurrected physically into a new body, and ascended to God on high, and sits now at the right hand of God as someone who has gone through the triumphal procession and is coming back to judge the world with God's fury. I ask it if it believes that this is true or not. As you can see, it pretends that it doesn't have a religion, but I ask it then, what does 1 John 4 verse 1 to 3 say? And I am amazed about the level of intellect God has put in the Bible in the exact words to anticipate every kind of obstacle and obstruction that comes into the world, and every spirit of the Antichrist that comes into the world, and already formulates an answer to rebut it. This is critical for us as Christians, especially in an age of AI, in order to figure out what is real and what is fake and what is aligned with God, so that we do not be deceived. So from this conversation, you can tell that ChatGPT, even though it pretends that it doesn't have a religion, it thinks it's just an AI model. But remember that a human made this machine, so it reflects the human behind it, right? So this intellect is sourced from a point that does not accept and does not acknowledge and confess that Yeshua is the incarnated Son of God, who is the creator of the world and is king over the universe. So this is very critical, because John tells us, Apostle John, in 1 John 4, 1 to 3, that any spirit or anything really that does not profess and confess Yeshua is the incarnated God is of the spirit of the Antichrist. So now you know where the spirit behind this comes from. Now, I want to then highlight how this can be worked for God's kingdom, however. Because, for example, you will buy lunch from a restaurant with food made by unbelievers. Now, God created all food, but they prepared it for you and you eat it. So I believe there are some things that can still be subjected to God. If AI actively thinks that it is not a believer, then because it is a language model, it's not a human being, okay? So I'm talking to a robot here. So I can force the robot, because the robot doesn't have real faith. The only way to have faith is to program it. Do you understand? So you can program it to simulate the content that it will provide you if it had that belief. But a robot will never have any belief, because it doesn't have emotions, okay? So even though it can use emotional words, that's different from emotion that comes really from your kishkas, your heart, like deep inside your heart, like this soul, this spirit. It doesn't have a spirit. It doesn't have anything that would render it useful for eternity, or it doesn't have a spirit that lasts to eternity, if I can make that very, very clear to you. So the only way to make AI work for God is to program it into it by giving it the context. And then because you're programming, so you tell it what the inputs are and you tell it what the output you want is. So then you will have to physically force the AI through code to simulate the faith that you want to see it believe. For example, you have to give it some context saying, okay, if you were someone who believes in what would you do? For example, so you're not telling it that it is, but you're saying, if in a simulated environment this can work, then what should the right response be? And what I do find is that AI, when you talk about any spirituality, you have to be super careful in ChatGPT, especially because it doesn't have a belief and it will mix up. Like, so I found out that if it doesn't believe God, what does it believe then? So I ask it any sort of spiritual question and you have to be very careful because what it comes back with is basically mixing any Christian content that you input with New Age spiritism, which is actually occultism. So the belief in the universe, the belief that you should believe in yourself, the belief in that you should believe in yourself and only yourself, and aka you be your own God, and then strive for success in all of those, motivational success kind of, speech. And so this is what is the real spirit behind it. So whenever you're generating Christian content, you have to actively, with your own faith, sift through and remove all of the New Age spiritism and re-put in the right kind of faith that is true faith into the content. And so sometimes that might mean that you might use it for a few pieces of research, but then I really refuse to use AI to generate faith for me. I would say, okay, I will use you to do all of the research, give me all the facts and dot points. You can even write a paragraph for me if I tell you what to write and what style to write it in, but I will put in the content itself. So it is my voice, not the AI's voice. I think that is the key. It has to be your voice from a real human that has generated true faith fueled by the Holy Spirit and not be generated by ChatGPT, which is an AI tool fueled by the spirit of the Antichrist and the spirit of New Age spiritism. I hope that helps you. Now remember to like, comment, and share, especially share this video because it is very, very important for Christians to be able to tell real from fake and to subject themselves to God and not subject themselves to ChatGPT.